Well, welcome. Again, I've mentioned this a couple of times. My name is Dr. Rihanna Rogers. I'm the moderator for the session today. I'm an associate professor at SUNY Empire State College and the Ernest Boyer Presidential Fellow at the Rockefeller Institute of Government, Center for Law and Policy Solutions. I want to welcome you to tonight's first event for #BlackandBrilliant. And thank you for being here this evening. We're going to have a wonderful conversation. Tonight's panel discussion is titled Breaking Through the Middle. And we have a number of wonderful guests today to speak about the different entry points into this conversation from a variety of different industries. So let's begin. So Alyssa, could you change the slide, please? So before we get started, I'd like to discuss the ethos. Who is #BlackandBrilliant? Well, it's a loose network of people from all backgrounds whose intent is to make an impact on corporate hiring processes and promotions, as well as leveraging networks of individuals in the process. The goal of #BlackandBrilliant is to establish a unified effort for people of all backgrounds to get Black and Brown peoples into leadership roles. So before we begin and I introduce our panelists, I want to remind you that participants will remain muted for the entire session, and all comments and questions can be placed in the chat box. We will have individuals here who are monitoring your questions and they'll be able to present them forward to me. I would just remind all of you to be respectful in your comments and please do engage with us. We want to hear your questions and concerns or ideas and strategies that you might have. So if we could move forward. So I wanted to provide you with the outline for tonight. We're just going to have this brief introduction and the vast majority of this panel is going to be focused on our presenters. We'll have the opportunity to engage with them in a dialogue. They've each been given 8 minutes to speak, but it's not a monologue. They're actually going to be interacting with us. So if any of the panelists come up with questions or make statements that you find directly pertain to you, feel free to send it in the chat box and I'll interject and I'll speak to the panelists about addressing that immediately. At the very end, we will have a Q&A where it's going to be an open Q&A with the entire panel. So feel free there as well to do that. Now, if you want to speak to a particular panelist inside the chat box, the best thing to do is to use the @ symbol and to say which panelist you'd like to speak to. So then I can specifically address that question to the particular panelist that you'd like to discuss with. Next slide. So before we begin, I'd like to open with a little bit of a framing dialogue, and then we're going to turn it directly over to the panelists. So let me begin. For many years, Black, Indigenous, and peoples of color, called BIPOC, have brought to light the unspoken barriers of advancement as well as the racialized injustices faced within the workplace. Although organizations have been trying to improve diversity in the workplace for decades, recent #BlackLivesMatter and other social justice conversations have pushed companies to reconsider the effectiveness of their practices and determine if they're truly making an impact on the retention and pipelining of diverse peoples. In many organizations, these questions around equity, around performance evaluations, hiring practices, promotion opportunities, transparency, and compensation have been brought to the forefront. The reality is that after even considering these proactive steps, there is still increased issues with actually finding ways to break through the middle. This divide is most prevalent when dealing with BIPOC populations. Dr. Cindy Pace indicated that developing a diverse leadership pipeline can benefit companies in all sectors. Firms with the most ethically diverse executive teams are 33% more likely to outperform their peers in profitability, and those with executive gender diversity worldwide are 21% more likely to outperform their industry competitors. As she continues, a recent study of venture capital firms found that more diverse teams have higher financial returns than their homogeneous counterparts. Additionally, CBS correspondent Christopher Brooks recently stated, Black people account for 12% of the US population, but only occupy 3.2% of the leadership roles within the US and 0.8% of all Fortune 500 CEOs. As Brooks continues, one reason Black professionals are struggling to scale the corporate ladder is due to the lack of face time with senior leadership that hinders their ability to build personal relationships and gain that access to promotion, which we hope will be addressed in meeting with these individuals tonight. Interestingly enough, these quotes are not far from the findings of the National Skills Coalition, who published a roadmap for racial equity in 2019, around ways to ensure effective workforce development in diverse populations. The report covered 9 policy solutions, including but not limited to the adoption of racial equity goals in post-secondary education and workforce development, apprenticeship opportunities, as well as investment in support services for things like childcare, transportation, and assistance. In a 2019 book, Race, Work, and Leadership, New Perspectives on Black Experience, co-authors noted that in order to support Black employees, business leaders must change biases and help employees better themselves. In a recent LinkedIn post titled, "How Do We Change the C-Suite?" by #Black and Brilliant Network co-founder Tony Efkin, a few questions emerged, which we have also posed to this panel. How do you break through? How have others done it? How do you bypass the unspoken rules of advancement? How do you know you're reaching out to the right people? In preparation for this talk, we have posed specific panel guiding questions to our panelists, which include, what are your 5 tips for breaking through the middle? What recommendations do you have to leverage your network, including personal, virtual connections in LinkedIn and on other platforms? What are the critical events that led you to where you are now? And what lessons can you share with others? So with that being said, I'd like to introduce our panelists. As you see from this slide here, we have Brian Norris, Senior Vice President at NBCUniversal Media. We have Colette Shelton, founder of Cozy. We have Justin Thomas Copeland, CEO of DDB North America. We have Nadia Bellin-White, Executive Partner at Oakley. And we have Jenny Clark, Leadership Staffing at Google. So we will begin by starting with Brian Norris. So Brian, if you would like to take over from here at addressing, what are your tips for breaking through the middle?
Thank you, Rihanna. I appreciate that. First off, I just want to say I'm thrilled to be here. I'm incredibly grateful for Tony and the rest of the team for putting together this event, for Black and Brilliant, for giving us a platform to basically talk to the world about our experiences and help people that look like us break through the middle, as specifically related to this conversation today. So 5 tips. So one of the first tips, and these are all things that I've done in my career that I'm happy to share with a larger group. But the first thing that I did was find a mentor. So these are things we've all heard the saying that you should find a mentor in order to help the trajectory of your career. But the way I look at it is a little bit different. Finding a mentor for me was more about finding an advocate, finding somebody who can help me get into the rooms that I otherwise wouldn't be invited to. And giving me an opportunity to have transparent conversations around everything from compensation to correct career leveling based on experience and titling. So I've used mentorship as an ability for me to break through the middle and getting a peek behind the curtain, if you will. So finding a mentor that leads to advocacy is the first one for me. The next one is about thinking long term, right? So many of us get caught up in thinking about managing to the quarter or managing our own careers to the current year. But if you have a long-term approach to how you approach business and how you approach your career, and really there's a saying in sports, and it goes like skating to where the puck is going and not where the puck currently resides. That's the way I like to approach my career, is thinking about what's going to be happening 3 to 4 or 5 years down the line and preparing myself to be adequately skilled up in order to make an impact during that 3 to 5 year period. Next up is embracing change and leading change. So one thing for sure that we experience is that change is going to happen, right? And what we do know is that most change efforts actually fail. 90+% of change efforts actually fail. And so, and a lot of the reasons why they fail is because people within leadership actually aren't, or people, reporting to leadership aren't embracing and buying into the change that's actually happening around them in their current work environment. So I love to encourage people to embrace change, and not just embrace change, but to be a part of the leadership when change happens. It's not good enough to just be a bystander and go along. You actively need to lean in to embrace change, to actually be part of the way business is moving along. Next up is being intellectually curious. So we've heard this time and time again. And so what that meant for me is actually being a student of business as a whole, not just being a student of my specific area, but being a student of business at large. And so what I did in my career path is, after 15 years in the advertising and media business, I took an opportunity to go back to school. So as a 36-year-old, I went back to school and I did my MBA because I felt that I was lacking in core business skills to move my career to the next level. I felt that I was an expert in advertising and ad sales, but as that related to business, I felt like that I needed some more education there. So I took a chance and I went back to school. And this brings me to my final point, is not taking the easy path. So it can be very tempting for us to stay in our comfort zone and actually move up within an organization and sort of fly below the radar, but that's not going to lead to anything good. I think we all need to challenge ourselves, not take the easy path. But how does that actually look when you are in a career and you're trying to build something aspirational? For me, what that means is making lists, right? I'm a big list keeper in my own personal life, but professionally, I keep 3 lists. The first list is I keep a list of companies that I think are interesting, that are going to be really interesting in terms of my long-term growth, talking about 3 to 5 years from now. I also think about jobs that I want to do, innovative jobs, jobs that actually push the envelope in terms of technology, in terms of servicing clients. And then I also think about types of people that I want to work for. We've all had not so great bosses in our career. But then you get to a point in your career where you shouldn't have to settle for working for somebody who's not going to take an interest in you and your career trajectory. And so I put on my list characteristics of a boss and team that I'd love to work with and for. And tops on that list is integrity and being able to work with and around high value people. So again, this all points back to not taking the easy path, but that could sound scary. But if you keep a list of things that you would like to accomplish and people you'd like to work with, it'll all come together. And so in terms of how to leverage your network, for me, this is very simple. Like many of you guys, you probably get people who reach out to you on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a fabulous network. It is a great tool to actually leverage when you're looking for information and to learn and to grow. But the one thing that I hate when people reach out to me on LinkedIn is people who are asking for something. I want to connect with people who add value to my life, to my career, people who are interested in learning from me and vice versa. So number one, I ask people to be authentic, to be their authentic selves when they're reaching out and looking to leverage their network to connect with me. You certainly have to add some value to the conversation, or it's going to be a one-way conversation that's not going to go very far. And so, and then finally, when I think about the path that I took and the critical events that led to where I am right now, I think about being able to take risk, right? A little bit about my career. I've been working at NBCUniversal for the last 2.5 years. And when I was prior to NBCU, I worked at Dish, where I was part of a team that introduced ad sales to the marketplace. And during that time, we introduced addressable television on a national scale to the marketplace. And we also introduced Sling TV to the marketplace. Now, 10 years prior, there were so many people that asked me, why would I ever leave a place like Viacom to go to an unproven place like Dish? And so I took a risk, and it was a calculated risk, and it was one that paid off. The other risk that I took was investing in my education and going back to school and doing the MBA. So really, it's about investing in yourself, being able to take risks, and surrounding yourself with people who are going to give you great advice, mentorship, and advocacy. So I hope that helped. I'm happy to answer any questions when we get to that point, Rihanna.
Thank you. I just wanted to highlight as we transition to Colette, a couple of key terms to think about is intellectual curiosity, right? And developing a mentor and an advocate. So if you have questions, we have a couple posted, we'll come back at the end. So I'd like to turn it over to our next panelist, Colette. Please go ahead.
Hi there. Hi, I'm Colette Shelton. I'm the founder of Coco Cozy, which is a content business and a design related business. I started my career in television. Most recently, just last year, I left my job as senior vice president at Fox Broadcasting Company to start my own business. And so, I kind of wanted to talk to you about my career as an executive, and then how I was able to transition to an entrepreneur. I think when we talk about 5 tips on breaking through the middle, after a 25-year career in the TV business, I think the first thing that I would say is that you have to lead with optimism. So I think I'm going to be talking more about the psychology than the tactical. And I think that if you look at, where we are in our nation and where we are even, in the world that we live in, I think that if you can lead with optimism at your job and don't let all of the noise and the realities of what we've, all had to go through kind of bring you down, I think that can be a key to helping you psychologically step into those positions. So I think leading with optimism is my number 1 tip. When you ever feel like you're just about to go down one road, go off the optimistic road. 2, it's interesting. A friend of mine once said, step over the nose. I would actually say leap over the nose. So, when in our careers as people of color or as a Black woman, I have heard no countless times, and I'm sure everyone on this panel has heard no countless times. So the energy and effort that it takes to really hear those no's and then kind of push them aside and leap over them and beyond them can help you advance in your career. I think that for me, I've had bosses who've said no. I've had, job interview after job interview. I've been told no. And I try to leap through that and leap over it, and then leap to the other side. So I think it's just kind of getting that mindset that a no is not a wall, it's not a barrier, it's something that you're just gonna leap over. 3, is interesting. Years ago, the CEO of a major company in the entertainment industry told me to keep my head down and to work hard, which by the way I did, and it did help. But what I realized is that what the advice should have been was keep your head up and work smart. I think as people of color, we've been told a lot, be quiet, play the safe route, go the safe route, do what you have to do, work hard. I'm a big advocate in hard work, and my career has been built on that. But what I would say, with these times changing and times being different right now, now's the time to keep your head up and to look at, as Brian was saying, look at the future, look at your career beyond the moment right now, look beyond to where you want to go, and then also to work really smart. In organizations, we're often considered the workhorses who've done all of the work, who go above and beyond. Are there ways and things you can do in your career where you can work smarter so that you can make those connections? You have the time and the energy to make those connections, to find those mentors, to look for the next opportunity. And number 5, I would say, is kind of along the same lines, or maybe this is number 4, is just do it and play it bold. I think oftentimes I found that in my career, the successful moments have been when I've just done it and I've just not gotten in the way of myself psychologically and thinking about what could go wrong, but just doing it. Earlier on in my career, I met, there was a person who I really wanted to meet, and I just reached out to them. And ultimately that led to a career-changing lunch where that person gave me some advice on where my career was going, and then ultimately made some introductions that led to, me transitioning my career from I was a TV producer into a TV executive. So that was a huge moment, and it was just because I just did it, and I decided to play it bold. And then the last thing I'd say, sorry, this is number 5. Number 5 would be like a lion. So a lion in the Serengeti desert doesn't, go after a wildebeest, for its meal and miss it and think, oh my gosh, oh God, I missed that wildebeest. Did the other wildebeest like me? Are the lions going to like me? They don't think that. They just think, what is next? What is my next opportunity? Where can I go? Where can I continue on? So whenever you feel those moments of where you have doubt, self-doubt, or you feel like there's something that is holding you back, just think of be like a lion. Just go after what you want. Do it unrelentlessly. Do not be shy or timid, and don't let those things that have happened in the past kind of hang you up. And then, just to talk to the point about leveraging your network, I think for a lot of us on this panel, I think, when we talk about mentorship, that would have been ideal in a lot of our careers to have those really strong mentors. Oftentimes, in just the reality of what has happened in the past, is that those mentors have not been as readily available to people of color. That being said, I do believe now is a really wonderful time. And I think that having, again, taking all of those things that I said, as far as kind of psychologically and the way you view moving forward, reach out to those people right now. Reach out to the people that you want to be mentors. Try to establish those relationships. I think that we are at a very unique time in our country and in the world. And I think there is an opportunity to meet and make those connections that may not have been as readily available in the past. So that's all I have to share, but I can, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. And if you have any questions about the entertainment industry, I'm happy to answer that too.
So thank you, Colette. We have time for one question with 1 minute. So if you can get this, if not, we'll retouch it again. But how do you reach out to people that are in places of leadership that you might be intimidated by, that might look different than you or act different than you? Yeah, what would be your advice?
Well, again, it's taking all of those kind of precepts I just laid out, which is just be fearless. When you're talking about be like a lion is fearless. And so, I found that early on in my career, I probably made far more of those fearless kind of advancements towards people than I did later on in my career. And I would suggest that just be fearless, because probably you'll get 90% no's, but then you might find somebody in that 10% who is going to be really helpful in your career. So I think if we push aside our fears, which is a big thing, like most groups aren't asked to push aside fears or intimidation. But I think that as people of color, we have to understand that, we are going to have to be better, brighter, and more brilliant.
Thank you so much. So on to our next panelist, Justin.
Hey, thanks, Rihanna. I just want to reiterate my thanks for the opportunity to have this platform. It's great to be with everyone. So yeah, I've been thinking hard about the top 5 things, because I probably had a list of about 50. But I've broken them down to 5 that I've lived by. As you've heard from the previous panelists, I think a lot of the experience that we've accumulated over the years, it does distill down. So my top 5 are the following. The first is almost counterintuitive. It's actually to accept that today could be your last day. It's a mindset that I've had since my first role in an agency. And that's not to be sort of dramatic, but what it does, and what it's done for me, is it's freed me up. It's freed my mind, not to hold on, but really to just give the best I can. It's freed myself up in terms of how I approach my day, how I interact with people. And also it's allowed me to be brave. I think we've heard a lot from Colette around being brave. I think being brave is really important. It's allowed me to be brave and to really not worry too much about the consequences, because if I'm in the moment and I know I'm doing it with the right intent, then normally it's going to work out okay. But free myself up mentally that, today could be my last day. It's just allowed me and afforded me a certain freedom that I haven't found, in many of my other colleagues who are worried about the next move or worried about the implications of. I think I've built a career, rightly or wrongly, known for that, known for being a change agent. And I think that mindset has been critical to that. So that would be my first thing. My second thing is really to celebrate my differences. Like many of the panelists, I'm sure you've been in so many rooms where you're the only one, or you've had the look, or you're about to present, and there's a filter before they've even seen the first slide. I've always embraced that. Like my thing is, you're never going to get around that until they believe in you, get to know you, feel comfortable with you. So I celebrate my differences. I don't format myself. I don't like my teams to format themselves. I'm a serious person. I'm a professional. So those things we don't even have to talk about. And I'm going to do the best I can. So allow me to be me. That's kind of my part of the deal. So then allow me to be me. Allow me to have my idiosyncrasies. Allow me not to want to talk, corporately all the time. Like whatever it may be, just allow me to be me, because I'm going to take care of business. And I'm going to take care of my teams. I'm going to take care of my clients. So I think, celebrating my differences and really sort of standing in those differences and operating fully in those differences. And don't get me wrong, it's taken a while. I mean, you don't start your career feeling completely confident to celebrate your differences. So I'll be lying if I said that. It's taken me a while. It takes a while to become accustomed to doing that. But once you get into that groove and you combine that by, it could be your last day, it frees you up. And I think people do their best work when they're most relaxed and they're just themselves. I just believe in that. So that would be my second one, to celebrate the differences. The third is sort of more rational, and we've heard a lot about this, but build your network. Definitely build your network, but don't discriminate in how you build your network. Build your network from the PAs to the office managers. Like, they are all people that have an influence. Talk to everyone, don't discriminate. Yes, go high, go to the C-suite, absolutely. Find a mentor. I mean, I'd agree with everything that was said in terms of finding a mentor, but build a real network of people, because everyone moves. I mean, you're going to move, hopefully, but people will move in their own way with you, and you may need them years from now. So don't worry about what their title is at the moment or their grade. Worry about if there's someone that you like and can help you, have an insight, just make you feel good. I mean, sometimes it's just about having people that you can take a break, have a real moment with. Those are valuable things as well. It's not always about trying to find the next opportunity. Sometimes it's just about having some downtime with people and having safe places in the workplace. So build your network and build a broad network, I would say. The next thing I would say is number 4, is learn the system that you're in. I think it was said really well that we're wired to work hard. Like we just have it in our DNA. And that's probably a subject of another discussion. But we're wired like that. We're raised to do that. We're told that we have to do that. That's unconditional. So that's cool. We'll do that. But let me understand the system that's at play. Who are the players? How does it work? How does it operate? What are the processes? Really understand the system that you're in. Because it's only when you understand the system that you can affect it, you can navigate well within it, and you become a master of it. I think you've got to become a master of the system that you work in. So that's my number 4. And then the last one I would say is build and advocate for your team. Because I think even if you don't run a team, but if you're in a team and you're doing great work or you're doing great things, advocate for your team, because ultimately that team's going to advocate for you. And those team members go off again to do different things. And suddenly your energy and your teamwork and your more holistic view of the world, thinking about what you're doing as a collective, that's going to be remembered. And people will advocate for you naturally without even knowing it, because they just like the way that you operated. So advocate for your team and the work that your team are doing, and you'll get that back in spades. Moving on in terms of the platforms and how to use them. I mean, one of my core things to everyone is, we've all got hundreds, maybe thousands of LinkedIn friends and followers, and that's great. And it's a great resource for content and the way that you can understand broader industrial contexts and how business is changing. All of that's really good, very rational. I would say take a moment and just really work out who is your core network. Who are the core people that help you the most, whether it's professionally and or personally, or people that you just connect in just to have a moment. Use the platforms, again, holistically, because I think they're there for that. And I do that regularly. Like, I reach out to people, have a moment. Yesterday, I was talking to someone in Italy about baking and pasta, nothing to do with work. Someone I met at work years ago, but we just had a moment. It was a great moment just to relax and think about something different before I went back into work. So I use the platforms to just have yes, professionally, but also have personal moments. I think that's really, really important. And then in terms of, just to finish off, the critical things, I've always put myself in places where maybe I had no business being. I put my hands up for the promotions that maybe were the less glamorous. An example is 1995, I put my hand up to launch Ford's websites around Europe. At that time, everyone was saying the internet is a fad. Like, why would you do that? You could be launching one of the sexy car brands. But I went the other way. I went the way of, doing something different, something that would set me apart, and also something that I personally believed in at the time. I think, don't be shy from taking a non-linear career path. That's really important. Everyone formats or tries to format, but I don't believe there is a box. There is a way to get to the C-suite. I think you can pick your way. And maybe it will take you a bit longer because if you haven't gone the classic route, but I think you learn so much. I think when you go in those unsuspecting places, you learn a lot more. You grow as a person, and also you get so many more life experiences. Having worked and lived in 8-9 countries, my network is global, but also the experience I've had, the human experiences, are priceless. So I would say that, doing those types of promotions where I wasn't expected to put my hand up, and I did, or deploy myself in other countries where I could have had an easier route, those are things that have really defined me and the way that I view the world. So hopefully that's of help.
Thank you so much, Justin. Nadia, I wanted to ask you a couple questions too. There's been some in the chat box discussion about effective mentoring and the idea of how do you find a mentor, and specifically, what are ways that you stay confident in yourself? So if you could address some of those, that would be great. Thanks.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. So thanks to Tony, and I echo everything that my fellow panelists have said. As I think through the tips for success, the one thing I want to say is, when you think about mentors and allies, it is really important to have people that look like you and people that don't. Because some of the feedback that you're going to get may not all be pretty. But you have to understand that some of those no's, some of that constructive criticism is all done to make you a better leader. One of the first things I did in my career is I wanted to curate my story. I knew early on, coming out of business school, out of consulting, that I liked transforming things, be it businesses, be it brands. At the early stages of digital back in 1999, this idea of transformation was truly going to be my superpower. So like some of my panelists said, I set on to kind of be a student of this. When you think about the principles of success and getting to the C-suite, you never stop learning. You never stop being a student, and you learn from everybody, from the tea lady to the most senior person in the room. Every single person has something for you to learn, and don't believe for a second that you're better than everybody else. I took a huge amount of risk, and some people thought I was crazy, when I left a comfortable job being MD here in North America to become CEO of Africa for Ogilvy. And some of my friends and colleagues said, but why? Why would you take that risk? Why would you go out of your comfort zone to do something completely different? One of the first things you need to understand when you have an idea of what your story is you begin to curate it. And that means every person you meet, every experience that you have becomes part of that golden thread that is your ultimate value proposition to the world. Not everyone needs to understand it, but certainly you need to. And therefore, what you're going to do throughout your career includes making sure you have certain experiences, your client experiences, your business experiences, the mentors and allies you have are all part of the master story that you take and how you actually conduct yourself in day-to-day life. I have always been fearless. And much like ducks, I think Justin talked about the fact I'm never afraid to take the path less traveled. I've always asked, but why? Why are we making that decision? Why aren't we making this decision? Let's take a chance on that person. I like that person's background. I've always absolutely been the advocate. Made me popular. Most of the time, it didn't make me popular. I've been told that I break a lot of glass. I like to believe that I break glass for good. And that ultimately, my breaking the glass will open up the door for others. So when you think about the principles of success that I have used, it's about your story. I mean, be honest with yourself. What's the story you're going to take? What's your superpower? And how does that really thread through your career? Who are the allies that look like you and who are the allies that don't? And let's be honest, they may not always have the same skin color, and that's okay. Because don't automatically assume that just because someone looks like you, that they're automatically on your team, okay? Be passionate about your craft. Listen, pay attention to the trends. I was doing digital early on, and a lot of people said, oh, that's crazy. It's never gonna go anywhere. Trust me, I'm here 25 years later, and clearly it's made a big difference in my career. And this thing about purpose, I've always tried to make my decisions about the clients I take on and the work that I do, which is aligned with who I am and my DNA. I believe that my purpose here is to be a difference, to be the difference, to be the duck that goes the other way, to be the advocate for everybody else, to be that transformation leader. That's what I've done. Have I had a lot of no's in my career? Yep. Have I made a lot of mistakes? Absolutely. Have they all been cool? No. Did I get up the next day and was I okay? I was. But I also had an incredible posse of people and my close network that I can call on. And it's really important as you curate your career that you have that group of individuals that you can call on and say, is this right? Does this make sense? Is this okay? Keep checking yourself. These are the principles of success for me. This is what I continue to do. And this is the advice I can give you tonight.
Thank you so much. And we have a little bit of minutes, so I wanted to ask you a question. A lot of people are asking about how do you gain confidence? How do you have that confidence in yourself to be able to find your purpose?
It takes practice. I think no one's going to tell you they stepped up to any of our careers believing that we had all the confidence. You make a lot of mistakes along the way, but over time, you become more confident. And then one day you walk in the room, and before you'd walk in the room and you'd say they're looking at somebody else, then one day you walk in the room and you realize, oh, they're looking at me. I am the person that's actually setting the tone in the room. And it's amazing when you actually have that pivot that happens. So much of it, and for all of you that are out there, so much of you have this amazing confidence inside of you. You have that thing that you know that no one else has. But all you need to know is how to harness it, believe in it, channel it, perfect it, and make that the superpower you use each and every day. That's how you become the confident person that you need to be. Block out the noise. Mistakes are okay. I think sometimes as people of color, we're raised to be told, never make any mistakes. You can't ever make any mistake or it's doom and gloom. You need to learn how to pivot from mistakes. The pivot it's all about the pivot. How you pivot, how you learn. Watch how others have done it. No one's built a career on perfection. You built a career on learning.
Thank you so much. And on to our next panelist, Jeannie.
Hi, thanks so much, Rihanna, and thanks to everybody. It's an honor to be with you today, and you guys have gotten lots of really great advice already from this esteemed panel. So I'll try to add maybe a couple of, let's call them exclamation points. And these for me are really tactical. I'm gonna start with something really, really basic. Do exceptional work and demonstrate additional capability and capacity. Colette mentioned working smarter, and That's what I'm talking about. So make sure that the quality of your work is just impeccable. Understand the deliverables. Does it have to be perfect? No. Do you need to try and understand what is the ask? Make sure that you really do. These are some foundational things. I think a lot of people are like, well, I'm kind of anxious. I think I can do it. Ask questions, but get it done right, get it done on time. Another one, feedback. So fundamental. And as people of color, very often we don't get it. I know for a fact that a lot of non-Black managers and leaders are a little intimidated by us and consequently don't always give us the feedback. And that can put us at a distinct disadvantage. So I would hope that you are in a position to ask that of your manager, and not just your manager, but others who are adjacent to you, up, sideways, peers, get feedback from them, and below. This is not just a performance evaluation time. This is all the time. How do you think I did? Give me some feedback. I could really use that. And you know what? Give that to somebody else. I consider feedback an absolute gift because I got to learn how to take it too, good, bad, or indifferent. If you give it, it's easier to take it. So feedback is essential. My number 3 is around what I call mastering domain knowledge. And there are a couple of other things. I'll stop there and pause because I'm an executive recruiter. That's what I've been doing for almost 25 years. And one of the things that we assess people on is indeed domain expertise. So understand the work that you're doing, whether it's the function, the industry, really have a strong command of that. That's essential. Along with that, great organizational skills. These are foundational. These are just some of the basics. But if you can't find that document that you prepared or that spreadsheet that you prepared and you don't have your files in order, then you're not going to be able to deliver on time. There's been a lot of talk about networking. I'm a big believer in that. More than just the networking, it's about relationship building and what I'll call social capital. So, are people going to return your phone call because they perceive that you are someone who is reciprocal in your efforts, or are you just that person that calls when you need something? Be honest, because we all know people like that, and frankly, they kind of fall to the bottom of my list. Okay, when it comes to getting back to them, but be that person who is always willing. And again, it's been said in the context of networking: be that person who's always willing to help somebody. You might not be able to do it all the time. But you're also not that person who's always looking for an answer, looking for that handout. Would you do me a favor, especially when you don't even really know somebody that well? So be careful of that. And I echo that sentiment. This one is really important to me. This is my 4th one. It's observe behaviors of people 3 levels above you. And I'm not saying that you have to emulate them, because there are some who are going to behave in a way that you would never consider doing. So learn from what works, what's effective, and what isn't. The truth is, there are a lot of different styles that work. We talk in terms of culture fit a lot as recruiters. I can't stand that term. I actually don't like it at all, because to me, it suggests that there's an expectation for assimilation. We're talking more in terms of culture add, which I prefer. It's better. It's not ideal, but it's better than culture fit, because I don't fit the norm. Right? I'm a 6-foot-tall Black woman. I don't fit anybody's norm. But culture add, yeah, you can definitely add from having me in your organization. And I think we need to get really comfortable in understanding what we are bringing to the table and having those communication skills. I'm all about competencies as a recruiter. And I want individuals to understand what their competencies are so that you can articulate them and you can build a narrative around them to be able to help somebody understand why you are that right person for the job. And don't allow them to focus just on things like, well, what was your experience? Have you done this before? Well, no, most of the people on this panel have not done a job before. That's the whole point, right? You do it for the experience, but you've demonstrated competencies in other roles that would suggest that you can perform that function really effectively. And so you bear the onus of conveying that to someone. My last one is, again, this is really kind of basic, but to me, I've got a real pet peeve. I was a linguist undergrad. I was sharing that with Rihanna. And words and communication are really, really important. And so I say to you, perfect your presentation skills as well as your written and verbal communication skills. I fear that social media in particular has made us really lazy and sloppy when it comes to spelling and to writing out full sentences. You need to be able to construct a thoughtful, compelling email, right? It's deductive versus inductive reasoning. Look it up, understand when one is more important and more effective than another, right? That's a homework assignment for you. But you've got to be able to be compelling and crisp and thoughtful in every single email that you're writing. And you can't just use a bunch of acronyms and letters and emojis to convey your sentiments. So get good at that. That is never going to go away. And that's something that I think it's a generational thing, I'll grant you, but I think it would allow you to really stand out if you're really crisp and focus on vocabulary, grammar, all of these things associated with really great communication skills. I'll pause there because I know we're really short on time and I want to make sure that there's time for some questions.
Well, I wanted to pause and thank all of our panelists for their contributions this evening. You've all provided a lot of insights in a variety of directions. I know that we're not going to get through all of the questions today. So what I wanted to tell all of you is that we can continue this conversation on #BlackandBrilliant. So we have that network group there, and I would encourage all of you to continue these questions and dialogue with each other. As you see from this network right now, there's lots of us that can offer you some insights. And if some of the panelists are willing, they may allow you to reach out to them as well and follow up. So what I wanted to share is I'm going to be grouping thematically the questions that I saw in the chat box. We had a lot of questions that relate to the mentor-mentee relationship. A lot of people are questioning the idea of how really do you establish that? Another kind of question that has been emerging, it was a singular question, but about education. Do lots of degrees help you? Is that what gets you in the room? Is it your resume, or is it something else that makes you stand out? So I wanted to pause and pose those two questions to the group. And if each one of you would give maybe about 30 seconds an answer, a little bit, that would be great. How about we start with Brian and we'll go down the row again.
Yeah, so I'll touch on the education piece because I get asked this question pretty often around should people, pursue like an MBA or some sort of higher education degree. And I always tell people that number one, they should have a good amount of work experience, so they're adding value to the education and to the classroom if that's what they decide to do. But in terms of getting you in the room, for me, 100% it did. So when I think about sort of some of my competitors in the space, people at similar levels, I found, and it may or may not have been because of my color, but I found that I was being overlooked for certain opportunities. And then when I went back and I did the MBA from a pretty good school, I found that I was immediately vetted when I was interviewing for roles. And quite honestly, some of the very tough questions that I expected, I actually didn't get because they quote unquote vetted me. I don't think that that's the right way to go about it, but I do think that I was allowed to interview for specific roles and opportunities, and that piece of paper and that degree actually did help me get into certain rooms. But then I also found that I have that piece of paper and many of my colleagues and peers don't. So I'm not necessarily sure what that means, but I know for me that it helped me achieve some of my goals.
Thank you. Any thoughts, Colette?
I will also speak to the education point. I have a law degree from Georgetown University, and I'm a licensed attorney in the state of New York, and I had no intention of practicing law, but I felt it was really important for me to advance my education. And so to the point that Justin had made about, and Naja had made also about constantly being curious, the law degree was an exploration for me in areas that I was very interested in. And I believe that the study of law helped me in my career later when I was negotiating big deals with Fortune 100 companies and creating these massive, large-scale, multi-million-dollar partnerships, having the some of the skills that law school and foundation that law school had given me were very helpful. And to Brian's point, I mean, it's kind of complicated. What I'm going to say next is that I think that my law degree helped me as a person of color. So I think that, the reality is sometimes we try to, we're trying to speak as if in a way we have the same opportunities as everybody else. We don't, unfortunately. And I'm not trying to be negative. I want to be positive. So let's say though, it is not an equal playing field. And that's not because of anything that we're doing. So for me, the law degree, I found that none of my peers had anything like the education that I had or had done anything like I had. But I believe it did help put me in a place where if I didn't have that, I wouldn't have been able to, there were no excuses that could be made. So I would advise that education is great for your personal benefit, and that it can also help in your career, especially if you're a person of color.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I'm going to jump in really quickly because I just want to say I had a tangible experience where I have been screened for clients all over the world where they showed, and I'm sure that my colleagues didn't have the same thing. They had to show my resume ahead of time. They had to show my pedigree ahead of time. They had to say, well, she's good, not just because she has this experience, but she has this pedigree. And it is completely unfair. And you can say that's not fair. Others don't have it. I'm just telling you what is. And in many ways, the master's degrees, at least for me in my path, has become the passport. It's the checklist. It's of course. I think, Brian, you talked about that. It's the nod you get in the room. But yeah, even though you're overqualified as compared to everybody else, it helps kind of dispel any myths when you walk into the room. There are some who managed to do it. I'm not saying it's an absolute must, but for me, it's made a huge difference in my global career.
Justin, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah. We're all advocating on education. I think that's also part of our upbringing. I'll give you two sides. So I'm the youngest of three boys. I grew up in what you may call the projects with our mother, myself and my two brothers. My mother would always tell the most roughest guy or girl, my boys are just, do not go near them. They are going to go to university. I have a different vision for my boys. And, bless her, we all got our university degrees. But we were sort of going through the system or the path that she created for us. I did get to a point in my career, though, where I had to think about, am I going to do an MBA or am I just going to carry on, with my career? And actually, I did something different. I started a business because I was interested in retail and I was interested in e-commerce. So I thought, well, you know what, why don't we invest the money in setting up a business? So we opened a shop. We got an accountant, we built a brand, we got the premises, we set up a supply chain, things I could have learned at business school, but we just did it in real life. So I'm a big advocate of education, but I also feel that there are different ways to educate yourself. And I would also always kind of say to people, I know a lot of people that haven't got degree education, and that's fine. As long as you are, you have the aptitude to learn and you have the commitment to learn, then I think you can show your intelligence in many ways. But yes, if you have the opportunity, I'd always advocate for university education, higher education and professional education as well. But there are other ways. And I think we also, as the world is changing, we need to embrace other ways of people learning. And that's one thing, I say in my own sort of career, that was a key moment of, let's just start a business. And I've done a few of those now, but it was a great point of learning by doing, rather than learning by going back to school. So you can do it in different ways. I just wanted to offer that as an alternative to my mum saying we will go to university, which we did. But then as grown-ups, we can educate ourselves in different ways.
Jeannie, I don't know if you want to address this because I also wanted to pose one more question with the time that's left. I think a large kind of understanding of everybody, and mentoring is a big piece that we talked about too. But the idea that's part of something that we're doing in #BlackandBrilliant is developing micro-credentials to upskill people, right? And so I would say this, there's some skills that people are missing. Jeannie mentioned some of those, right? Some of those skills that will make you stand out, which is another question posed in the chat box. So I'd like to start with Jeannie, and maybe we'll end with this and kind of tie up. But what are those skills that make you stand out to break through the middle?
Well, yeah, let's talk about leadership skills. I think that's ultimately, and the way that we assess for leadership has many facets. And so some of it has to do with can you operate at scale? So let's say you're used to working on small projects of a certain size, and at a place like Google, that's always really important. So can you demonstrate that you can take something, build something, or take something that's already established and make it better? You have to be able to operate in ambiguity. When I arrived at Google, I was brought in to lead diversity for their senior leadership hiring efforts. And within 2 months, I was asked to create an internal mobility program, which I did. And I kept both jobs and then added yet a third. And so be careful what you ask for when you do something well, right? It's because you get more, but that's part of what you're trying to do. It's building scope, not, again, this isn't so that you get promoted. This is so that you're building your toolkit and you're building capability within the organization. So that leadership piece has many components, but you've got to distinguish yourself. I guess the other thing I would say, and kind of moving on, I know we're at time, followership. So having people that are willing to be, not just because you're a leader, but because you have vision, you have clarity, you can articulate that, you have capability, and you have credibility because you understand the domain. That's going to allow people to say, I'm going with them. And that's the kind of followership. Again, I'll reiterate, you don't have to be the title. You don't have to have the title of the leader in order to have followership. You can do that from wherever you're sitting and build that base, bring other people along, fold them in, and set the vision to keep driving forward. That's one of the things that's going to make you break through.
Great. Does one of our panelists want to have the last statement? You're all polite. I think that's great.
I would just say then, believe in yourself. I just think I'm a big believer in self-belief. And I think, hopefully this has been instructive for the listeners, but just believe in yourself and cut your own path.
Yeah, I echo that.
Wonderful. Well, I wanted to say thank you to everybody who came. I know that it feels like we went through a lot of information really quickly. I want to once again thank our panelists. It was wonderful to hear the 5 tips to break through the middle. Hashtag Black and Brilliant has social media outlets. Please continue to follow us. Our goal is to continue to reach out and really do make impactful change. Just to let you know, this is the first in a series of events that are going to be planned and coming up. Next Tuesday, we will have another panel discussion, which I will be moderating. And then the following week, we're going to have an interview that's going to be live. So please check on hashtag Black and Brilliant, and you'll see a lot of these events posted. If you want, feel free to reach out to me as well. I will post my email in the chat box. And thank you once again for everybody being here. This has been a wonderful session, and I look forward to seeing you all again.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.